triangle. Bruce Raymer gut-checked himself in the mirror, drawing in a breath of bravery and exhaling nerves. He would soon set out for the settlement and try to do some good. The face staring back at him resembled the one he'd arrived with 8 months earlier, perhaps a bit more worn and sober. He'd come to Alphabet City just before the elder Bush was elected. Arriving chock full of apprehension, longing, and untested ideals, he viewed his 25-year-old life as a work in progress. He'd shown up feeling like a half-baked cake in search of the ingredients needed to complete itself. But the oven of New York was always on, whether one's batter were ready or not. Carefully combing the shock of unruly dark hair fringing his prematurely bald pate, he contemplated the values and beliefs that had led him to the settlement. He felt anxious today and needed to refresh his intentions. He'd grown up in Buellton, North Carolina, a place with wholesome small-town values and rigid small-town prejudices. Neither a jock nor an aristocrat, he had recognized Buellton's limited horizons at a young age. He'd always pined for the big city he knew so well on television, from cop dramas to rock and roll high school. These fictional fantasies informed his own, but non-fictional New York had been serving up uncut reality since his arrival. Collecting keys and change, he scurried about his floor-through apartment, which felt narrow and cramped despite its general emptiness. The sink and shower protruding from the living room wall contributed to the claustrophobic effect. He'd gotten the place cheap because the bathroom wall had actually caved in and been temporarily sealed off with wooden boards, asbestos insulation, strategic nailing, and massive quantities of duct tape. High winds sliced through the makeshift barrier like icy shears. The son of a lay ecclesial minister, Bruce was Catholic with a taste for the transgressive. In high school, he dated Kit Carwell, local punk rock guitar goddess who would later tour the South with Dead Silence. He dreamed of acting in films, not lightweight Hollywood stuff, but gritty movies like The French Connection, Serpico, Taxi Driver, or anything by Scorsese. He aspired to find his way through the mean streets of New York. At his core, though, he craved affirmation, gentleness, vibrancy. He looked for flowers blooming in local gardens, no matter how tiny, street art, any reminder of why he chose a citadel of decay in which to finish sculpting his persona. Meanwhile, the hardships surrounding him called to his yen for public service, a value imparted by his upbringing. A bit late for his meeting, he jogged down 4 flights into the afternoon shadows of East 7th Street, which felt bombed out, like Dresden at the end of the Second World War. The scattered buildings on the north side of the street had been reduced partly to rubble. Splashes of graffiti color leapt from crevices in a landscape of ashen filth. He trotted east past junkies bobbing forward and back like beach toys on a mild tide. Darting crisply between a pair of swaying daytime drunks, he made a show of looking frequently in all directions. Tall and lanky with slightly stooped shoulders, he possessed sprightly energy but not much muscle. Being mugged was always a risk, but Bruce figured his best defense was to appear alert. Why would a mugger single out a jacked-up rabbit when there were so many languid tortoises to choose from? He turned down Avenue C in the direction of community settlement. His coordinator, Maya Gutierrez, was expecting him. The first extracurricular activity he'd taken on after landing a day job at the Tompkins Square Library was volunteering to tutor illiterate adults. The settlement had been assisting underserved communities since the 40s. Assistance took many forms, and there had never been a shortage of recipients for any of them. The ethnicity of the settlement's clients would shift over decades as different migrant enclaves would come and go, but there were always plenty of folks in need. Bruce felt proud to be part of it. His first student had been a chatty, middle-aged Latina named Astrud. Fair-skinned and weather-beaten, she was probably younger than she looked, despite heavily moosed hair that stood up like crabgrass in the front and was severely shaved in the back. Her open, unsentimental smile, faded purple vinyl jacket, and constant gum popping accented a hard-won toughness. She was a survivor. Her learning challenge appeared to stem from a confounding type of attention deficit disorder. Words poured ceaselessly from deep in her throat, jumping topics with jarring frequency. So this bus driver says he's going to kick us off right in the middle of the block. My daughter is going to her prom this weekend with a boy who looks like a model. Good-looking kid. I'd jump in myself if I were that age. Just don't want her to end up like me, having a kid at 17. I hope she has a good time, Astrud. Young people should have some fun and feel carefree on occasions like this. I know it isn't always like that, but I wish that for her. Let's continue with the story. Keeping her on task was a constant struggle. After a couple months, she'd begun to wear him out. Good-natured and cooperative to whatever degree her attention could allow, she had grown fond of him. In terms of instruction, however, she would yes him to death and then return the following week without having retained a thing. He ardently wished to help, but felt out of his depth. No doctor, psychologist, or social worker, he was entirely untrained. At their last meeting, he'd expressed his concern to Maya. I care about Astrud and don't want to hold her back when someone with proper training might be able to help her progress. You don't understand how progress is measured here. Step 1 is just to get them to show up regularly, to earn enough trust where they'll come in and sit with you for an hour a week. Astrud's never done that before, so you've made more progress than you realize. Winded from hiking under the Williamsburg Bridge and then up 5 flights into a labyrinth of hallways through the settlement building, he practically fell into the guest chair opposite Maya at her desk. Embroiled in a phone call, she held up a finger, signaling him to wait. Her long, lacquered black hair was pulled back into a tight bun. Usually a riot of ringlets fell to her shoulders, covering the elegant, light coffee brown neck Bruce was now noticing. She was working hard to get off the line. Yes, but, Mr. Brown, it's my turn now. Mr. Brown, if you would allow me to respond, I'll tell you we have a solution. We are assigning a new tutor to Hector. In fact, I'm sitting with him right now. So, yes, that's right. They'll meet now and we'll work out a schedule. Thank you. Maya half slammed the phone into its cradle and rolled her eyes. Some people, she boomed good-naturedly. Her signature warmth flooded back in. You look good. How are you? I'm fine. Did I hear you say I have a new student? The coordinator let out her breath. I have news on Astrud. Bad news. Her daughter was raped, I think after her prom. She was beaten pretty badly. Will be in the hospital for a while. Her mom is in no condition to study. Maya delivered the information matter-of-factly, but Bruce wanted to cry. Oh, God, Astrud was just telling me about it. Poor girl. He wondered how Maya could seem so unaffected before realizing she must hear such stories somewhat regularly. If she allowed herself to be affected, she'd probably lose her mind. I'm so sorry, he said, trying to behave professionally. Can I contact her and see if there's anything I can do? It would be best to stay clear. If she associates the program with this time, it could make it harder for her to eventually come back. I have a new assignment for you, Hector Baez. Young man, maybe a little younger than you. Okay, what was all that about on the phone? He lives with a man named Gordon Brown. The last tutor didn't work out, and what you heard was Brown sticking his nose in that. Hector's in room 5 right now. You ready to meet? Let's get to work, he said, rising from the chair. They walked down the corridor to a large classroom with just one occupant. The young man sat at a desk too small for his adult legs, which were wedged up under the desktop like a spider's. His slight build suggested a physical brittleness, as if he could be snapped like a twig. The pinched face featured brown, narrow eyes, a weak chin, and a pencil-thin, manicured mustache. His light brown skin emitted a slightly yellow pallor. Hector, this is Bruce Raymer, your new tutor. Bruce, meet Hector Baez." "Hello, Hector." From his seated position, Hector took Bruce's extended hand. His grip was meek, like a handful of cooked spaghetti, Bruce thought. "Yeah, I am Hector," he mumbled, squinting. "Hello." "Well, shall we get started?" On cue, Maya left the room. "This is what I was reading with Sheila." "Okay, let's start at the beginning." "Hi, I am Jim. She is Sally. We go to school." Bruce settled into a familiar haze of patronizing patience as Hector stuttered through four-word sentences. His skill was low, and his mind seemed sluggish. They began working together twice a week. It was stiff and uninspired at first, but eventually the pair started loosening up with each other. Hector's progress was glacial, but at least they were getting along. "You're going to get there," Bruce would emphatically assure. "Before you know it, you'll be reading everything." Cheerleading was one part of the job Bruce had down pat. He could channel his own need to be liked into ecstatic reconfirmations of his students' untapped potential. As unlikely as the positive literary vision may have been, Hector responded to the encouragement. He wasn't used to receiving it and quickly warmed to his tutor. A month later, Hector was reading 5-word sentences with more complex ideas. She takes the baby with her. The baby cries, Hector. Cries, oh, outside. It is cold. The tutor would nod with indulgent approval. Hector's tiny, hard-working eyes would shine with gratitude for the attention. I'm becoming important to him, thought Bruce. Must be doing some good.